Welcome to the Casting Shadows blog and day 2 of RPG A Day 2021, where I don't know yet what we're going to be talking about. Let's find out. I have a die in my hand. I'm going to roll a d8 to commemorate 8 years of RPG A Day. I have 4 prompts to choose from because this is a weekday. We've got map, sense, plan, and voice. So 1 to 2 map, 3 to 4 sense, 5 to 6 plan, and 7 to 8 voice. And I got the die in my hand, and let's go. And we get a 6. Okay, 6, plan. Well, as I let the die fall from my hand, I really began to hope in that instant that it would be voice. But I guess, if wishes were horses, we would all be riding. So I was unable to affect the outcome of the die with my emotion. But it's okay, we can talk about plan. Unlike last year, where I focused on perspectives, methods, and tips that I appreciate, and we did that while playing through a one-shot of the amazing Ghostbusters RPG. I don't know if you remember that, from West End Games, built from the greatest minds of RPG design at the time. This year, I plan to focus on just sharing examples of things that I enjoy. So plans and planning are often a source of RPG humor, especially, I find, when a proactive group is operating under a reactive GM. Sparks will fly. But the pleasures and pains of planning are rooted deeply enough into the hobby that entire games have sprung up around planning as the central activity. I tend to like the challenge and opportunities that planning allows, and so I have spent a little, or maybe more than a little, time organizing my thoughts on it. So we'll talk about that today. Planning, it strikes me, comes in two general forms, two large-scale categories, and individual groups of gamers will ultimately find the elements that they want to shape into a specific form of planning for their play. But in my head, I like to think of them as the leverage form and the run form. Of course, this is not clear at all if you don't recognize what I mean by leverage or what I mean by run. Jargon gets in the way. So it's clearer to explain them as contingency improvisation and contingency preparation. It just lacks that spark or that ability for someone to understand what you mean and internalize it instantly when they can. But these days, I imagine more people are familiar with Blades in the Dark than either the Leverage RPG, which came from Margaret Weis Productions, and used Cortex, or Cortex Plus, and probably more familiar with Blades in the Dark than the Leverage TV show it was licensed from. So it might resonate more to think of these two forms as blades and runs, and certainly has more symmetry. But let's get into the meat of things rather than standing around the butcher's counter considering the label on the shrink wrap. Form number 1, what I think of as leverage, but it's probably better now to say blades form. Well, this is a pretty popular style of play now, and we can see it projecting back into the past when we look and listen to how people talk about how they played. But in this style, the GM and the players, they run through an amount of information. They go through a fast pitch to establish the framework of a situation that their characters are in. And any planning that occurs is intended to be broad strokes, not details. So we don't role play through every potential. We don't line up all the ducks and consider how we're going to shoot them down. We talk about what our roles and responsibilities are. And in play, as the dice and as the NPCs and the challenges get a chance to interact with our decisions through our characters, then we use flashbacks or other methods along that line to flash back to the planning that we imagine took place that we fast forwarded over. So this has an advantage for speed and efficiency of play, as only the contingencies that actually matter need to have playtime devoted to them. And they're developed and rolled for with a specific context that helps the player feel the professionalism of their characters. After all, we are flashing back to resolve a problem that we are experiencing now in play, to pre-resolve that experience using our character's abilities. And so we know precisely what the character would have been able to predict because they are a professional. In other media, we can tie this method to the Leverage TV show, of course, but also to predecessor shows like Mission Impossible and certain episodes in certain seasons of Sherlock. There are moments where the attention of the participants is directed to a different point in time. Challenge isn't removed. It's just placed into a different order. And this gives us that same experience as watching the TV show and seeing how professional the characters are without it spoiling the surprise of their preparations, but from the inside. The other form, the runs form, well, this is also fairly popular. It's a very well-established style of play. It may suffer somewhat from being a form of planning that people do because they don't know any other way to do it yet, and so are learning how to do it as they discover the need to do it. But a group that pays attention to their own play can turn that experience to their advantage and wind up with an enjoyable process of playing through planning. Because here, the GM and the players play through an entire planning stage of an operation, from gathering information, conducting research, recruiting assistants, procuring gear, and so on, whatever's needed. And when they're ready, you then play through the operation and get to experience the dice, how their plans and skills and the effect of the NPC dice and skills all factor into their possibility for success. This has the advantage of serving up a challenge that player skill and character skill can combine to handle. It puts an emphasis on risk and reward. And it can operate either on a purely meta level, or it can operate on a character level to provide an immersive experience on one, or if you're lucky, both of those levels. Older gamers might see a hint of old TV shows like the A-Team in this category of planning. And in shows like that, we would be treated to the clever division of labors for the talented crew of operators, and we get a montage scene of preparation, and then we would see the execution of the plan and have skill, superior firepower, or superior intellect, and a little luck save the day. It would happen in sequence. And the surprises would be in how the plan was executed, or what unforeseen circumstances were overcome because of the quality of that plan. Recently, we have been experiencing a fair bit of planning in our own play. And if you are interested in seeing some examples of us play and plan, there are 2 links I would recommend. In the Age of Rebellion playlist on my YouTube channel, we have a video called Jedha, Jedha, Part 4, Age of Rebellion. And this is midpoint through a mission, and it's the point where it's necessary to plan. And the other example is the first session of 3 for our recent play of Broken Compass, the Ravagers of the Frost King's Tomb. I'll leave it up to you to figure out which form of planning is represented by which example. Tomorrow will be day 3 of RPG A Day 2021, and I think I will randomly determine the prompt for tomorrow as well. I'm not going to do random rolls every day, but I think for the next couple of days at least, that'll be what I do. Unless, of course, something crops up to foil my plan. The prompt choices for tomorrow, it's Tuesday, so our primary prompt begins with a T, and it's tactic. The other 3 options are risk, support, and image. As we intimated yesterday, as you go through and look at all of the different prompt options, I'm fairly sure you'll begin to notice some themes or connectivity between each of the options that might make it easier to navigate through 31 days of posting. But anyway, tomorrow we will see what prompt we end up talking about. Tactic, risk, support, or image. Until tomorrow, take care. You have been listening to another day's installment from RPG A Day 2021 from the Casting Shadows podcast. This podcast is an extension of the Casting Shadows blog, now sailing into its 11th year, and also an extension of our channel on YouTube, which lives under the name of Runeslinger.